All right. Okay. So, yes, good morning, everybody, and officially welcome to Internet Technologies. So, today, as usual, we're going to go over what this class is all about, what some of the projects are going to be, why you're in here. A lot of times, music industry majors wonder why they have to take this class, right? So, we're going to cover that and why it will hopefully be useful to you. And then we will talk specifically about how this is going to work online since that's kind of unusual. So, all right, let's just go ahead. Like I said, if you haven't logged into Canvas already, I would recommend doing that, although you can just kind of follow along with what I'm doing here as well, whatever is comfortable for you. So, I want to just take a minute to kind of go through this. I'm also going to open up the syllabus for the class. And so, let's take a minute to go over the syllabus and make sure nobody has any questions. And then we'll look at Canvas. Okay, so let's zoom in here. Looks like everything's going kind of slow. Okay, let me make this a bit larger. Okay, so Internet Tech 1 here. You can see first my information, and I should introduce myself too. I know not everybody has had class with me. So I'm Teddy Michaels. You can call me Teddy or Professor Michaels, whatever you prefer. I studied sound design at the Savannah College of Art and Design in my undergrad and also in my graduate studies. And in grad school, I kind of focused my thesis on making programming accessible to artists and musicians and also on audiovisual installation art. So basically, I'm really into anything that combines art and music with technology and code. I do a lot of freelance web development. That's what most of my kind of professional life is web development. Kind of by chance, a lot of that has been for people in the music industry, so artists, labels, that sort of thing. Um, and let's see, I'm originally from Brunswick, Georgia, small town in Southeast Georgia, and came to New Orleans not long after college to do the kind of interactive installation work that I was into. And I've been teaching now at Loyola for I think 6 years, teaching music tech, internet tech, computer music programming, and some creative coding stuff in the design department as well. So here's my contact info. Email is probably the best way to get a hold of me. I'm usually pretty good about getting back to you guys quickly. So with phone, if you call me, if I don't recognize the number, probably like most of you guys, I'll assume it's a robot. So, if you want to shoot me a quick text and say, hey, this is so-and-so from your internet tech class, just let me know and I can get back to you that way too. But usually email is the best way to make sure I don't miss it. And let's see, my office is 432, but most of our meetings, if you want to meet one-to-one, are going to be on Zoom this semester. My office hours are Monday and Wednesday, 11:30 to 12:30, so I should be available at those times. You should be able to rely on that. Here are the two sections. If you did miss a section, there's not really anything wrong with you coming to the second one if you wanted to do it in person. Just definitely don't get in the habit of that because we don't want to have like a huge number of people in the second section because you want to sleep in a little bit more. So try to make it to your section, but just know that option is available. Let's see here. So required materials. You see a lot of stuff here, but don't worry. Everything is free. So I've tried to make a point with this class to point you to as many useful free resources as possible. One of the really nice things about the internet is this kind of philosophy of openness and making things freely available. And so there's a lot of really great tools, even again, like professional level tools that you can use or access for free. So the text editor that we're going to be using, because you are going to learn a little bit of coding in this class, what we call HTML and CSS. Those are the languages that make up websites. We're going to be using brackets for that. So you could go ahead and download that. If you go to the site here, you should see that there are options for Mac or PC. Okay, so you can go ahead and get that. You should get that as soon as possible. We might take a look at it today. I'm not sure. We'll see how much time we have. But you could go ahead and download that while we're talking, just so you have it. That'll be one of the first things you need. You're also going to need an account on Wix. This is where we're going to be doing your first project. So Wix is like a easy to use site builder. A lot of you have probably used it before. It's not particularly complicated. It's pretty straightforward. So we don't spend a lot of time on it. We don't need to take a lot of class time covering Wix, but it's just to show you that if you want to get a website up and running as quickly as possible, that is a good option. Codecademy is something we're going to use for like extra outside of class work for some coding review stuff on HTML and CSS. So you'll make a free account on there. An account on something called GitHub, which is, it may sound like an oxymoron, but it's like a social network for programmers in a way. It's basically a place to store code online and collaborate with other people on it. We're not really going to be using it for that. The plan is to use GitHub for some hosting, essentially, just some basic hosting for your websites for free. And then finally, we're going to do our final project with something called Webflow, which is another web-based tool that has a free version. So you don't have to like make accounts on all of these right away. Obviously, we'll be doing this in class or, you know, during your independent work. But just so you know, this is what you're going to have. None of it costs any money. But that's what we're going to be working with. Does anybody have any questions just about this basic stuff at the top? All right. So just the basic stuff here. What is this class all about? And I'll try not to read it word for word. But it says a systematic study of new media technologies dominating the music industry. Basically, we're focusing on web design, making electronic portfolios, band web pages, artist websites, using a variety of different methods. HTML and CSS, site builders. We'll talk about implementing multimedia like images and video and embedding stuff from Spotify and SoundCloud. So it is a web development class, but it is specifically geared towards the music industry, right? So the tools that we're going to look at are going to be more for people who are making band websites, artist websites. And if you're not a musician, then, you know, we'll just kind of focus on making like a personal portfolio of some kind. So really, as far as the topics go on these websites you make, I don't really care what you make it on. It's what, you know, I assume that you will know the most useful thing for you to make your website on. And so you can choose whatever. So we're going to learn the fundamental concepts in internet technologies, HTML, CSS, hosting, site builders. You will deploy and finish multiple websites in this class. Oh, I need to fix this right here. We're not using Cache Music anymore, unfortunately. Let's just change this to Webflow. Okay, so we're going to be making, basically at the end of this class, you're going to have hopefully 3 fully functional finished websites in 3 different platforms, basically. Now, how you want to approach that is up to you. If you want to make every website the same, some people like to do that. They like to just make their band website 3 different ways and see like which one works best for them. And that's a useful thing to do. Or you can make them all completely different. But we're going to be using Wix and Webflow as site builders. And then we will also look at what I like to call hand coding your website. So like making it from scratch. Not everybody likes that, but some people love it and some people prefer to do it that way. We'll talk a little bit about like fundamental components in contemporary computing, hardware and software. And well, actually, it doesn't look like I mentioned this, but we will talk about design a little bit. Not a whole lot, but I try to incorporate that into our sites and stuff. It's something that I kind of took for granted when I first did this class, since I came from art school and we all had to take design and art classes and stuff. But I know that's not the case for you guys, so I like to talk a little bit about typography and color selection and palettes and just those kind of basic things that can be good to have in your repertoire when it comes to building this kind of stuff. And again, I know not everyone in here is a designer or wants to be, but just so you have some extra stuff in your toolkit. Okay, so at the end of this course, the successful student will be able to read and write HTML code and how to integrate it with CSS to create a website and understand the role of site builders and hosting services. So the idea is that you're going to make these different websites and different platforms and have a basic understanding of the relative like advantages and disadvantages of each one, right? You'll have a hands-on understanding of that. So even if you're not going to be a web developer, and most of you won't be, if you need to knock together a basic website real quick, for one, you can do that. And then if you want to go farther with this, if you do want to be a web developer, you'll have a good foundation to start from. And also, even if you're just like a manager and you never make a website again, you'll have a good understanding of, well, when you go to hire somebody to make this for your artist, like what are the different possible options there and what seems the most realistic for your budget. You'll have a good idea of how much time something might take if you ask somebody to like hand code a website versus just using Wix or something like that. Okay. So any questions just about those general ideas for the class? Cool. Jump in whenever if you think of something. Okay, so the layout for this class. Here's the calendar. I'm going to try to stick to this. I should be able to stick to it pretty well. I usually am able to. I've got holidays on here. Basically, what you can see, we're all online. And so I've tried to make it pretty obvious which of these classes is going to be synchronous. And it may be that I changed one or two of these. I haven't completely finalized the schedule because this is the first time I'm kind of doing this. It's not the first time I've done this class online, but it's the first time I've done it in a regular semester with this kind of content. So things might shift a little bit. So basically, you can see when you look at this calendar that for each week there's going to be like two topics, right? Usually this week is weird, right? Because it's just like a half week. But next week you can see there's computing fundamentals and the structure of the internet, and then site builders. Like those are your two topics for next week. And so that's Tuesday and Thursday. On Tuesday of next week, it's not sync, right? So we're not going to have a synchronous Zoom meeting on next Tuesday. And that's going to be pretty common. Usually what I'm going to reserve the synchronous meetings for is like new important stuff that I think it's important that we actually meet and you guys have time to ask questions and stuff. This stuff is really kind of just like background lecture and theory stuff that normally I'd stand up and just talk about in class. And so it's not really a big deal that we don't have to do like a back and forth on that. And so what I'll usually do is pre-record videos for all this stuff. And that way you guys can go through it at your own pace. You can pause, you can rewind, you can go back, anything you need to do to really absorb that information. There's a presentation you can look through while you're listening to the recording and watching the recording. So any of those times where it's not synchronous, in the case of Tuesday, then you're just going to take your own time. I don't care if you do it on Tuesday, right? It doesn't really matter. Just as long as you do it before the end of the week, you should be fine. But you can see on Thursday, the second line here, we will meet synchronously, right? So we're going to be covering the introduction to Wix and site builders, okay? Any of this stuff like quizzes or Code Academy, that's extra stuff. All of this stuff, like if there's a quiz, it means that you have to get it done by the end of the week before Sunday at midnight. Okay, so again, that's on your own time, whenever is convenient for you. So if you ever see a quiz or an assignment due, with the exception of a couple places where we're actually doing presentations, you will be turning that stuff in just before the end of the week. Okay. So again, if it's marked sync, then that's going to be a synchronous Zoom class, just like we're doing now. And if it's not, then you will just have something to do on your own. And I'll show you on, if it's a little unclear here on the calendar, I hope it will be pretty obvious when we look at it on Canvas that you'll see how this is set up as well. So week 3, the plan is to meet synchronously to talk about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript a bit, and maybe look at a basic intro to HTML. And then there's going to be an introduction to your first main project. So the reason this one is not synchronous, and this is going to be pretty common, when we get into doing the HTML and CSS stuff, if we were physically in class, what I would be doing is pulling up the text editor and typing HTML and CSS, and you guys would be following along from your station. And we could try to do that over Zoom, but as you can imagine, trying to like jump back and forth between windows, like, oh, I'm in brackets trying to type my code, and then I'm going to try to jump back over to Zoom and see what Teddy's doing. That is a little hard. Unless you're lucky enough to have 2 screens, it's kind of hard to do that. So usually for those kinds of like coding walkthroughs, I just pre-record something and give you guys time to go through that at your own pace. So you can pause it, take as much time as you need. Try to work out a good split screen situation if you can do that, to see both of them, whatever works best for you. But I've found that seems to work best in the online setting. Okay. There may be times where our synchronous meeting will be like 10 minutes where we'll come in and I'll say, hey, I recorded a video on this topic, go watch it. Let me know if you have any questions, before you go. Is everybody good on what we talked about last week? And that'll be it. So most of this class is going to be asynchronous, independent work, but I'm always, available if you want to set up a one-on-one Zoom meeting if you're not getting something. Okay. So that's really important. If I don't hear anything, I'm going to assume that you're getting everything from the pre-recorded videos. So just don't be afraid to reach out. Does anybody have any questions about this calendar? Just about that layout? No? Okay, cool. So just to give you an idea, like I said, the first project is going to be working in Wix, or our site builder, to make a website. And then we will get into quote unquote hand coding, which is where you're going to use HTML and CSS. That's by far the most complex and involved way to make a website. Like I said, some people love it, some people hate it. It's just, I want you to at least see how that works. I know most of you will not go on to hand code websites, but it's good for you to know. And I think it will be illuminating as far as understanding what the websites you use every day are actually made of. So let's see here. Site builder, our HTML web page. We'll get into CSS. We'll talk a bit about responsive design, which is making sure your websites work on phones, because that's obviously really important in a lot of cases, especially with your band websites or artist websites. There's a good chance that the majority of the traffic will be on a phone. So it's really important that it looks good at small screen sizes. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about design generally, and then we'll get into the final project, which is on Webflow, which is another kind of site builder. So that's the idea. It's basically, this class is almost 100% just like hands-on project work, right? So there's a little bit of lecture stuff at the beginning on kind of just some basic stuff, ideas in computing, and then like a little like simplified miniature kind of history of the internet and what the internet is actually made of. And then the rest of it is basically hands-on project work. You can see that we will have some synchronous meetings for like presentations. Most of our meetings near the end of the course will be synchronous because we'll be presenting and going over the final project and all that stuff. But most of this stuff in the middle, you can see usually what I'm going to do is like kind of introduce the topic, just to hopefully reinforce the basic ideas there. And then it'll be a lot of, stuff that's up to you to stay on top of and follow along with videos and stuff. All right. Okay, Codecademy. I do want to go ahead and mention this right now. So Codecademy, like I said, is where you're going to be doing your extra kind of reinforcing work on some of the topics that we'll be covering. So you can see here, if you go to, oh, they've changed this. They change it every semester, I feel like. Let's see. I'm going to go to HTML and CSS here because that's what we're doing. And you are going to be doing the Learn HTML course and Learn CSS. Okay. You can see there's lots of other stuff if you want to get deeper into this, all the way from more advanced CSS to A-Frame, which is VR, web VR. So lots of interesting stuff. But we're just going to be focusing on the HTML and CSS stuff. And so you'll see on the calendar that, for example, like up here at the top, I recommend that next week you start on that Codecademy HTML stuff, but I'm not going to check it. Okay, so that's recommended to go along with what we're doing in class. I will not be checking it until like week 5, where it says Learn HTML is due. So I'm going to have you turn in proof that it's done. So it's up to you to stay on top of that. You can do it all the weekend before if you want, but I'd recommend just trying to keep up with it along with the calendar there. So there's that that you'll be doing along with all the other stuff. And the final exam is going to be during final exam week. It will be online and asynchronous, so you can do it whenever you want during final exam week. Okay. Here are the percentages. You can see that with, let's see, the projects are, basically 50% of your grade or more. So those are the main part there. There's a fair number of quizzes, but the truth is there's not a lot of grades in this class. Okay. So it's really important that you complete everything. A 0 is going to be a big deal in this class since there aren't too many grades. So as long as you do everything on time and get it all turned in, you should be fine. This is an online class, so there's not really an attendance kind of issue here. Late work. Again, make sure you turn in all of your quizzes and assignments before Sunday at midnight. And the next day that you turn it in, it'll be 10 points off. And then after that first day of being late, I'm not going to accept anything. So as long as you just turn in stuff on time, you should be good. The usual stuff. The rest of this is the usual accommodations. If you have any accommodations, make sure you work with Accessible Education as soon as possible to make sure I'm aware of that. Although, as you can imagine in this class, there's kind of like plenty of extra time built into completing assignments and quizzes. There's no timers on quizzes or anything like that. You can take as much time as you need during the week to complete a project. So I kind of feel like extra time and stuff is built in. So any questions about this syllabus in general? Any of the class? All right, great. So what I'm going to do is let's switch over to Canvas to make sure you're comfortable with everything there. Okay, so I'm going to go to the home page here and we'll just kind of go through everything. I'm going to post this introductory video here on the home page once it's done, just for anybody who missed this, or if you just want a refresher on how everything's organized. But I think it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty flexible, as you can imagine, since we're online and a lot of it is asynchronous. Some notes, I think I've already mentioned all of this stuff. Yeah, so we've covered that. Announcements, just make sure that you are checking your Loino email, because that's how I'm going to get in touch with all of you if necessary. Here's the syllabus if you need to reference that again. But the number one thing that you're going to be checking into is the modules area. So I've tried to organize this in a way that I think it looks pretty straightforward. You can see here it just starts with the course overview. And this is what we're doing right now, the introduction, which, like I said, I will post here as soon as that's done. Then you can also see this resources area. So this is stuff that's just course-wide stuff. The links to all of the software you need, all of the presentations that we'll be covering in class, all of the review sheets for all the quizzes, those are all going to be in resources. And week 1, you can see this is what we're doing right now. And aside from what we're doing right now, there's a couple of other things that I'd like you to check out. One is this Codecademy video, which is worth checking out. It's fairly short, okay, of how we're going to be using Codecademy. Although I kind of just went over it, but that's another thing to keep in mind. And I'm not going to force you to like watch this over Zoom, but I would definitely recommend checking this video out. It's David Bowie talking in 1999 about the impact of the internet and its relationship to the music industry. And it's really interesting and very forward thinking. And I think like the perfect setup for this class, basically talking about how the internet has changed the way the artist interacts with their audience. And now it's even more true than ever, right? In the COVID era, what he's saying. So that's a really interesting thing to check out. And like I said, I think it sets up the course well. So just make sure you look over that. It's pretty brief, and then you'll be good for this week. That's really all we've got, just this course introduction. Next week, you can see we have this fundamentals of the internet thing here. And so there are a couple of presentations to read through, okay? There's a link to the review sheet because you're gonna have a quiz on this stuff. And actually, let me make sure that is all good. Okay, yeah, that's gonna be at the end of next week. So next week, just make sure that you read over these presentations. That's gonna be on your own time. And then for the synchronous meeting the plan is for it to be on Thursday. So again, Tuesday, Thursday, right? Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday. That's the 2 different sections. The plan is for us to have a synchronous meeting on an introduction to Wix. And a lot of times, and so this is the thing, there may be occasions where turns out like actually maybe it's more beneficial to just do like an asynchronous thing, or again, what I might do is just kind of like do a quick check-in at the beginning of class on Thursday, take 15 or 20 minutes to kind of introduce you to the platform, and then you can kind of take your own time to go through these videos. Because again, it's a little easier to just follow along with a video than trying to jump back and forth between Zoom as I'm doing it in real time. So that's probably what we'll do on Thursday. Let's see here. You can see Codecademy. I recommend you get that done by the end of the week, week 2. And you can see everything's labeled with the date. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. You just want to make sure that every week that you've completed both modules for Tuesday and Thursday, and that you finished all of the projects and quizzes and stuff for that week. So this is your main thing you're going to be checking into, the modules. You will be able to see all your assignments here, along with, you should be able to see the rubrics for things. Let's see here. So you can see, this is how I grade stuff. There's a rubric, like a checklist of things you need to do. So you'll be able to see those in assignments. And grades, I usually try to post stuff pretty quickly. I think that is about it, other than maybe when you have a quiz. But again, all those links for the quizzes and assignments will be here on the modules page. So it should be pretty obvious how to get to that stuff. And again, on the home page, you can see the link to our Zoom classroom. So this will always be where you want to go if we're having a synchronous meeting. So does anybody have any questions about Canvas? Everybody good? All right, cool. Let's see where we are here. Has anybody downloaded Brackets already? No?
I did, but I don't know if it like installed correctly.
Are you able to open it?
Let me see.
We've got plenty of time, so you guys download brackets and let's see if we can. We're going to do something really simple in it before we go. I'm going to go ahead and open it and show what you should see if it's working. Brackets.io is the site. All right, I'm going to close this. I've got somebody's project from last semester that was open. So yeah, take a minute to download and install brackets. It's not a huge deal if you're having issues getting it to work today. But I am going to just give you a quick intro here to how we're going to be using it. And hopefully, if you're freaked out by the idea of coding, maybe put you at ease a little bit and show you that programming websites doesn't have to be too scary. So hopefully when you get into brackets, you see something like this, or you might see like a welcome screen or something. As soon as you get to this point, just do File New, and you should just see like a blank kind of area here with like the number 1 with a cursor where we're going to type. And I'll give you a minute to install brackets, give you another second to do that. And actually what I'm going to do, since this isn't really part of the kind of course introduction, is I'm going to go ahead and just stop recording. So that covers pretty much all of the important stuff for how the course is going to work for anybody who's watching this after the fact.